Imagine getting rejected by like 50 different girls in a row.
Ouch. Yeah, that's rough.
Right. But wait, it gets worse. The 50th girl actually tells you she can't date you because she's secretly in love with a basketball player.
Oh man, that's a very specific kind of heartbreak.
Exactly. So what do you do?
Mm.
Well, I mean, if you happen to be this towering red-haired teenage gang leader in like 1990s Japan, you basically declare a blood feud against the entire sport of basketball.
Naturally. I mean, what else are you going to do?
Right. But then, and this is where it gets amazing, to impress the 51st girl, who was, incredibly sweet and just completely oblivious to your violent reputation, you accidentally joined the basketball team.
And in doing so, you basically inadvertently spark this massive, cultural revolution.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, I mean, it is one of the greatest inciting incidents in modern storytelling. You start with this hilarious, petty teenage grievance, and it spirals into this, epic exploration of grit and redemption and, physical mastery.
That is the premise of Slam Dunk, which is Takehiko Inui's legendary manga. But, you listening to this right now, you might be wondering why on earth we are talking about a 1990s Japanese sports comic on a deep dive about language.
Right, because usually when we think about learning a new language, the image that comes to mind is, well, it's pretty sterile.
Yeah, totally sterile. It's like a quiet classroom, maybe a textbook open on a desk.
And you're just repeating these polite, perfectly formulated phrases like, the weather is quite pleasant today.
Exactly. It's safe, but I mean, it's also entirely disconnected from how humans actually communicate when their adrenaline is pumping.
It's completely disconnected from the reality of lived experience. We expect language learning to be this neat, orderly process of, memorizing flashcards. But when you step onto a basketball court or when you dive into a gripping sports narrative, that sterile classroom just vanishes.
Right.
You're thrown into a linguistic landscape that is loud, it's sweaty, it's emotional, and incredibly fast-paced. You are forced to understand words not by their dictionary definitions, but by the physical actions and the intense emotions they actually represent.
Which brings us to the whole mission for today's deep dive. We are colliding language learning with sports manga and real-world athletic drama.
Yeah.
We're going to take the massive cultural phenomena of slam dunk, along with the very real heroics of players operating on the global stage today, and use them to master English basketball vocabulary. And, I mean, more importantly, we are going to master the idioms that have leaked off the court and into everyday life.
And there's a very specific, neurological reason why this approach works so well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when you contextualize vocabulary within a high-stakes narrative, like when you actually care deeply about whether a character succeeds or fails, your brain stops doing that clunky word-by-word translation.
So you're not just, running through a mental dictionary.
Yeah, exactly. You stop thinking, okay, what is the literal noun form of this action? Instead, you start internalizing the action itself. The language bypasses the analytical part of your brain and attaches directly to visceral emotions. You actually start thinking in the target language because the words are tied to movement and essentially survival.
That is so fascinating. To build this out, we've pulled together an incredibly diverse stack of materials. I mean, we're looking at extensive basketball glossaries, ESL curriculum guides designed specifically to teach sports idioms, a really fascinating academic breakdown of Japanese sports culture.
Which is so good, by the way.
So good. Plus the official lore from the Slam Dunk universe and some incredibly tense sports journalism covering the 2024 Paris Olympics.
I know it sounds eclectic, but there's a very clear through line here. Basketball has developed a truly universal language. And because the sport requires such a specific set of physical and mental skills like hyper-awareness, instant pivoting, seamless nonverbal teamwork, the words used to describe those skills have become incredibly useful in describing just, modern life.
I was actually wondering at that exact point while looking through the curriculum guides.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it fair to say that understanding a sports-specific jargon like specifically basketball actually gives you a cheat code to understanding American corporate and social culture? Because honestly, it seems like every boardroom conversation I hear is just a repurposed basketball game.
Oh, I would absolutely argue it's a cheat code. If you look at the evolution of modern business English, the values prioritized on a basketball court are the exact same values prized in a startup or, a high-stakes corporate negotiation.
Like what specifically?
Fluidity, adaptability, role-playing. So the language naturally bleeds over. If you want to sound culturally fluent in an English-speaking business environment, you almost have to speak fluent basketball.
But to speak speak the language, we need a guide, right?
Yeah.
We need someone who started exactly where a beginner language learner starts, with zero knowledge, a lot of frustration, and just absolute clumsiness.
Yes.
Which brings us back to our red-haired gang leader, Hanamichi Sakuragi.
Sakuragi is just the perfect avatar for the reluctant learner. When we meet him in the first volume of Slam Dunk, he doesn't just lack knowledge of basketball, he actively despises it.
He hates it.
He hates it. He thinks it's a game for losers entirely because of his terrible romantic track record.
Right, I mean, he is nursing a massive ego wound. But then he meets Haruko Akagi in the school hallway. And Haruko is sweet, she absolutely loves basketball, and she asks him, based purely on his massive height and physical build, if he plays.
And because he is instantly, helplessly in love with her,
He lies through his teeth. He just says, of course I do.
yeah,
He joins the Shohoku High School basketball team with absolutely zero intrinsic desire to actually play the sport. His motivation is 100% extrinsic. Get the girl.
which is honestly how so many people start learning a difficult skill, right?
Yeah, that's true.
They don't start because they have this burning passion for English grammar or like coding or public speaking. They start because they have to. Maybe it's to pass an immigration test, to get a specific job, or yes, to impress someone. The initial motivation is rarely pure.
And when Sakuragi walks into that gym, he is met by just an island of misfit toys.
Mhm.
The Shohoku team is iconic precisely because they are all deeply, deeply flawed.
Oh, totally.
First, you have the team captain, Takanori Akagi. Yeah. He is this massive, incredibly strict, imposing figure, and his teammates secretly call him Gory behind his back because he literally looks like a gorilla. And plot twist, he is Haruko's older brother.
That creates such a brilliant immediate tension. I mean, Akagi is the embodiment of discipline. He has spent his entire high school career dragging these mediocre teams along, fueled by this singular burning dream to win the national championship.
Yeah, he takes it so seriously.
He treats the court as sacred ground. So when Sakuragi shows up treating the sport like a complete joke just to flirt with his sister, Akagi has zero patience for it.
It is oil and water. Then you look at the rest of the starting lineup. You have Ryota Miyagi, the point guard. He is short, which is obviously a massive disadvantage in basketball, but he makes up for it by being the absolute fastest guy on the court.
Right.
And he is also dealing with his own unrequited crush on the team's female manager.
Which is great because Miyagi and Sakuragi actually bond over the shared misery of being rejected by women. It's a very humanizing element that grounds these athletes in relatable teenage angst.
It really is. But then the story gets surprisingly dark with Hisashi Mitsui. This is the part of the lore that really caught me off guard.
Yeah, Mitsui's arc is intense.
Mitsui was a junior high basketball prodigy. He was the MVP.
Yeah.
But during his freshman year at Shohoku, he suffered a devastating knee injury.
And this is where the psychology of the manga just really shines, because instead of rehabbing patiently, Mitsui's ego and despair completely break him. He feels betrayed by the sport he loved.
He just gives up.
He quits, falls in with a bad crowd, and actually becoming a violent gang member. He spends years actively trying to destroy the basketball team out of pure, unresolved bitterness.
The scene where his gang attacks the gym and it devolves into this massive, bloody brawl is so intense, but it culminates in this incredibly raw, tearful breakdown where Mitsui looks at his old coach and just sobs, "I want to play basketball."
What gives you chills?
It's this profound realization that the anger was just a mask for how much he missed the game.
It brings a level of redemptive drama to the court that elevates the story far beyond just a simple sports comic. These aren't just kids playing a game, they're young men fighting for a second chance at life.
And rounding out this chaotic roster is Keita Rukawa, the star rookie. He is a basketball genius, he's effortlessly cool, he rarely speaks, and naturally, Haruko is secretly head over heels in love with him.
Making him the absolute ultimate foil for Sakuragi.
Exactly. Sakuragi completely despises Rukawa. They are bitter rivals on the court, in the locker room, and in Sakuragi's mind for Haruko's affection. Rukawa's singular obsession with basketball contrasts so sharply with Sakuragi's initial lack of focus.
If we pull back and look at this from a sociological perspective, you have to ask why this specific roster, former delinquents, heartbroken kids, an arrogant prodigy, and a desperate captain, resonated so deeply that it sold over 120 million copies.
120 million, that's insane.
It was voted the #1 manga of all time in a major Japanese poll, And I think it's because the basketball court in Slam Dunk functions as a sanctuary of reinvention.
Oh, I like that.
These characters are deeply flawed and struggling in the real world, but within the geometric boundaries of the court, the rules are clear. If you put in the work, you see the result. The court provides a structure that allows them to redeem themselves and build something greater than their individual fractured egos.
That transition is everything. Sakuragi's internal shift is what I kept thinking about in the context of language learning. He starts off hating the fundamentals. I mean, Akagi forces him to practice basic dribbling in the corner by himself while the rest of the team gets to scrimmage.
Yeah.
Sakuragi feels completely humiliated. He thinks he's way too good for the basics.
Right, he wants to skip straight to the flashy slam dunks.
Exactly. And isn't that exactly like learning a language? You want to skip straight to having deep philosophical debates in a Parisian cafe, but your teacher is forcing you to conjugate irregular verbs in the corner.
Yes.
You feel clumsy. You feel stupid. The grammar rules feel like pointless drills. But then, slowly, Sakuragi starts to notice his own improvement. The ball feels like an extension of his hand. He starts understanding the geometry of a rebound. And suddenly, the motivation flips.
He stops playing just to impress Haruko.
He falls in love with the process of mastery itself.
That is the pivotal shift from extrinsic motivation to intrinsic motivation. He wants to get better simply for the joy of being better. But, as you pointed out, you cannot achieve that mastery without submitting to the fundamentals. Sakuragi couldn't just invent his own way of playing. He had to learn the literal building blocks of the game.
Which is exactly what we're going to do right now. Sakuragi's transformation doesn't just happen in his head. He literally has to learn the physical vocabulary of the sport from scratch. And that physical vocabulary is what we need to master to understand this cultural crossover.
Right.
Let's break down the essential terminology from our glossary sources, starting with the most basic state of being on the court, the dribble.
Now, for someone completely unfamiliar, a dribble is the act of bouncing the ball on the floor using one hand at a time in order to move. It is the only legal way to travel with the ball. But linguistically and strategically, it's so much more than just bouncing a ball. A dribble represents a state of continuous active possession.
Yeah, if you think about it, it's a very vulnerable state. The ball has to leave your hand, hit the floor, and come back up. In that fraction of a second, it doesn't really belong to you. It's in no man's land.
Exactly. You have to maintain absolute spatial awareness while manipulating the ball, keeping it away from defenders while surveying the rest of the court. And the moment you stop your dribble, you commit. You can't start dribbling again. You only have two choices left: pass or shoot.
Okay, so let's talk about the pass. The sources highlight how directional the language of passing is. You have the chest pass, where you violently push the ball directly from your chest to your teammate's chest. It's fast. It's a straight line.
Right.
But then you have the bounce pass, which I always found fascinating from like a physics standpoint.
Yeah.
You intentionally bounce the ball once on the floor so it comes up into your teammate's hands. Why do that? It seems slower.
It is slower, but it's a geometric equalizer.
Okay.
Imagine you are 6 feet tall, and the defender in front of you is 7 feet tall with massive sweeping arms. If you try to throw a chest pass, they will swat it right out of the air.
Oh, because they just have the reach.
Exactly. But it is incredibly difficult for a massive, tall human being to suddenly bend down and intercept a ball striking the floor at a sharp angle. The bounce pass uses the floor as an ally to exploit the physical limitations of a taller defender.
It's all about angles. I love that. And then there's the shot, the attempt to score.
Yeah.
But basketball is inherently a game of failure. I mean, most shots miss. And when they miss, we get to Sakuragi's absolute specialty, the rebound.
A rebound is gaining possession of the basketball after a missed shot. And there are two crucial types that carry very different psychological weights.
Okay, what's the first one?
An offensive rebound is when your team misses, but you fight through the defense to grab the ball back, giving your team a second chance. It is incredibly demoralizing for the opponent.
Sakuragi becomes a complete monster at this. He has this incredible jumping ability, but it's really more about his spatial prediction. He learns to read the trajectory of the ball as it leaves the shooter's hand, anticipate where it will bounce off the rim, and just get there first.
It requires such an aggressive claim on physical space. Now, the other type is the defensive rebound, where you grab the opposing team's miss. This effectively kills their attack and secures the ball for your own team. In the language of the sport, controlling the rebounds means controlling the pace of the entire game.
And if you don't want the opponent to even get the shot off in the first place, you block them,
Yes.
just swatting the ball violently out of the air. It is the ultimate physical denial. Okay, so those are the active verbs. Let's talk about the nouns. The geography of the court itself, because the language relies heavily on where these actions actually take place.
The boundaries define the battleground. You have the baseline, which is the boundary line running directly behind the baskets at either end. The sidelines mark the long outer edges. If you step on or over these lines while holding the ball, you are out of bounds.
In the center, you have the center circle for the opening jump ball. But the most critical areas are closer to the basket, right?
Absolutely.
You have the free throw line or the foul line. And reading about this, it's really a psychological island. If you're fouled, you stand there alone, completely uncontested, and shoot. The game stops. Everyone in the building is just watching you.
It tests a player's mental fortitude just as much as their physical skill. You can hear a pin drop sometimes, but perhaps the most transformative piece of geography on the court is the three-point line, often referred to as the arc or the perimeter.
Right, because any shot made from beyond this massive semicircle is worth 3 points instead of the standard 2.
And linguistically, the introduction of the three-point line completely changed how we talk about the game. It stretched the defense. It created concepts like spacing the floor.
Because they have to cover more ground.
Exactly. You aren't just guarding the basket anymore. You have to defend a massive amount of square footage, which opens up lanes for players to drive inside. It completely changed the spatial strategy.
So that's the clinical rulebook terminology. But basketball, probably more than any other sport, is defined by its street culture. The slang carries this incredible emotional weight.
Definitely.
Let's look at the act of scoring. If I leap up and aggressively smash the ball down through the metal hoop, that's a dunk. It's a statement of physical dominance. But what if I shoot from like 20 feet away and the ball arcs perfectly through the air and goes to the net without even grazing the metal rim?
That is a swish.
Swish.
It's a beautiful piece of onomatopoeia. The word itself mimics the crisp, satisfying sound of the nylon net snapping as the ball passes cleanly through. Calling a shot a swish implies perfection and finesse.
It really is the best sound in the world. But let's look at the dark side of that. What if I shoot the ball and my calculation is just completely wrong? I miss the rim, I miss the net, I miss the glass backboard. The ball just sails through empty air and drops out of bounds.
You have just shot an air ball. And as the linguistic analysis in our sources points out, this is not merely a descriptive term for a missed shot. It is a cultural marker of profound public shame.
Oh, yeah.
When a player shoots an air ball, the opposing crowd will often chant, air ball, in unison. It implies a complete breakdown of mechanics and spatial awareness. It is visceral failure.
It's agonizing to watch. And there is a cousin to the air ball, which is the brick.
Ah, the brick.
Now, if I shoot and the ball hits the rim or the backboard with this loud, ugly, clunky thud and bounces off violently, that's a brick.
Notice the imagery there. A brick is heavy, it's industrial, it lacks aerodynamics. Calling a missed shot a missed field goal attempt is clinical. Calling it a brick is an insult. It implies the shooter lacks touch, grace, and skill. The language actively judges the aesthetic quality of the failure.
I love how descriptive that is. Okay, let's move from individual actions to the architecture of team strategy. Offense versus defense. On offense, the foundation of teamwork is the screen, which is also called a pick.
This is a fascinating concept. A screen is when an offensive player who does not have the ball stands completely still, acting as a literal human wall.
Took a wall.
The player with the ball then dribbles very closely past their teammates, scraping their defender off onto the wall, thereby getting open.
It's a legal obstruction. And this leads to the most famous play in basketball, the pick and roll.
A classic.
Player A sets the human wall. Player B dribbles past, drawing both defenders. At that exact moment, player A, the wall, suddenly pivots and rolls, or basically sprints toward the basket wide open, expecting a pass.
It's a beautifully choreographed dance. It forces the defense to make impossible split-second decisions. If they chase the ball handler, the roller is open. If they stay with the roller, the ball handler shoots.
On the opposite end of the teamwork spectrum is isolation, or ISO. This is pure gladiatorial combat. You literally clear out all your other players to the far side of the court, leaving your best scorer totally alone against their defender. No screens, no passing, just one-on-one.
It's a direct physical and psychological duel, relying entirely on individual superiority.
And then the crown jewel of the offense, the alley-oop. Let's paint an audio picture of this because it sounds like chaos if you don't know the vocabulary.
It does.
So imagine a player without the ball makes a sudden, violently fast run toward the basket. That's called a cut. The teammate with the ball sees this cut developing and throws a high, lofted pass, seemingly to nobody, just floating near the rim.
Just putting it up there.
The cutting player leaps into the air, catches the ball mid-flight, and before gravity can pull his feet back to the floor, he violently dunks it through the hoop.
The alley-oop is pure magic because it requires an almost telepathic level of nonverbal communication. The passer has to calculate the speed of the cutter, the height of their jump, and the trajectory of the ball, all while moving at full speed.
It's breathtaking to watch. Now, defense has its own specific vocabulary to stop all of this. And our sources detail a few distinct philosophies. The most basic is man-to-man defense. It's exactly what it sounds like. I am assigned to guard you wherever you go.
Right.
But then you have zone defense, where players don't guard specific people. They guard specific areas of the floor, shifting together like a net.
Man-to-man is about individual accountability. Zone is about collective spatial control.
Okay, I have to push back here, though.
Sure, go ahead.
If I'm just trying to read Slam Dunk or, watch a game on a Sunday afternoon, do I really need to know the philosophical difference between a zone defense and a trap or a press? I mean, isn't this just coaches trying to sound smart and overcomplicating a game where guys are basically just running back and forth?
It's a totally fair question, and honestly, a lot of casual viewers feel that exact way, but no, it is not an overcomplication.
Really?
If you don't understand these terms, you are just watching a chaotic blur of 10 people running around in shorts. Understanding the terminology reveals the invisible architecture of the game. For example, a press isn't just defending, it is a full-court assault. Instead of retreating, the defense aggressively guards the opponent the entire 94-foot length of the floor. It is designed to induce absolute panic and physical exhaustion.
Oh, like trying to suffocate them before they even cross midfield.
Exactly. And a trap is when two defenders suddenly abandon their assignments to violently corner the player with the ball, cutting off all passing angles to force a turnover or a steal.
Ah, I see.
If you don't know what a trap is, you just think a player magically lost the ball. When you know the term, you realize you just watched a brilliantly executed high-speed ambush. The vocabulary lets you see the matrix.
That is a great way to frame it. The vocabulary decodes the chaos. And what is truly wild is that once you understand these mechanical actions on the court, you start noticing that the exact same words are being used in places where there are no basketballs, no hoops, and definitely no shorts.
Yes.
The literal language of the game has been hijacked by everyday English, which takes us from the hardwood court directly into the boardroom.
This is where our curriculum guides on idioms become so revealing. Metaphor is how we make sense of abstract concepts. In corporate culture, navigating social dynamics, managing projects, these are highly abstract.
Right.
We need physical metaphors to ground them, and basketball provides the perfect lexicon.
Let's run through these, because I guarantee if you work in an English-speaking office, you have heard almost all of these. First up, most famous, a slam dunk. We defined it as a forceful, unmissable shot right at the rim.
Right.
In real life, if your boss says, this new client acquisition is a slam dunk, they mean it is a guaranteed success. It's an absolute certainty, an easy win.
Then consider the full court press. We just established that on the court, it's a relentless, exhausting defensive strategy designed to suffocate the opponent. In a business context, if a marketing team decides to put a full court press on a new product launch,
Yeah, they're going all out.
yes, it means they're utilizing every available resource. Social media, television, print, aggressive outreach in this massive, highly coordinated effort to overwhelm the market. It implies maximum pressure and urgency.
What about a game changer? This one has been beaten to death in tech pitches. On the court, a game changer might be an unexpected tactical shift, like suddenly running a zone defense or subbing in a massive player. In life, a game changer is an element, a new app, a groundbreaking AI, a brilliant new hire that completely transforms the existing paradigm.
But the idioms aren't always positive. We need to look at a very common negative one: drop the ball.
Now, wait a minute. I'm going to challenge the origin of this one. Dropping the ball feels like it could easily belong to American football or rugby or even baseball. Why are the linguistic sources insisting that the emotional weight of this phrase comes specifically from the mechanics of basketball?
It's a brilliant distinction to make. Think about the mechanics of possession in those different sports. In football, if a quarterback throws a pass and the receiver drops it, it's a failure of a highly complex, fast-moving transaction. It's bad, but it happens constantly.
Sure.
However, Basketball, as we established with the dribble, is fundamentally defined by constant, controlled, active hand possession of the ball.
Right, you're physically tethered to it.
Exactly. So if a basketball player is simply dribbling up the court under no immediate pressure and they just lose control and the ball bounces away, they literally just drop it, that is the ultimate unforced error.
Because no one even made them do it.
It represents a shocking lapse in basic concentration and bodily control. You failed at the most fundamental requirement of the sport. Therefore, in a professional setting, if you say, I dropped the ball in that report, you aren't just saying you made a mistake. You are admitting a failure of a basic expected competence.
Wow.
You had total control over the situation, and through your own negligence, you lost it. The basketball context makes the admission much more devastating and accountable.
Okay, I will never use that phrase lightly again. It really implies a foolish lack of focus. On the flip side of a mistake is a last-second victory. The buzzer beater.
Ah, the best feeling.
In a game,
Yeah.
this is a shot that leaves the player's hands just as the game clock hits 0 and the loud horn sounds. If it goes in, it counts. In daily life, a buzzer beater is completing any task at the absolute last possible millisecond. Submitting your taxes at 11:59 p.m. on April 15th is a buzzer beater.
And we also have the concept of the rebound. We talked about how an offensive rebound is grabbing a second chance out of thin air. Metaphorically, to rebound is to recover emotionally or professionally after a significant setback. You lose a major contract, but you pivot and sign a better one a month later. You rebounded well.
Or the classic social application.
Yeah.
The rebound relationship.
Oh, yes.
You go through a terrible breakup and immediately start dating someone else just to soothe your ego. You are trying to grab the ball back while you are still emotionally off balance.
It perfectly captures the frantic, reactive nature of that behavior.
The sources list so many more that are just deeply embedded in our syntax.
Yeah.
If you are on the ball, it means you are sharp, alert, and highly organized, just like a player in an active defensive stance.
Right.
If a negotiation stalls, and I say the ball is in your court, it means the responsibility to make the next move has physically shifted to your side.
If a coworker behaves unprofessionally, their actions are out of bounds, outside the agreed-upon lines of acceptable conduct. If a manager decides to temporarily remove you from a high-stakes project because you're underperforming, they bench you.
If you see someone you are attracted to and you gather the courage to go talk to them, your friends will tell you to shoot your shot, taking the risk, knowing you might miss.
Yeah.
Or you could pull a crossover. In basketball, a crossover dribble is a rapid change of direction designed to break the defender's balance. In life, a crossover is a clever, unexpected pivot in your career or strategy. And we can't forget the assist.
The assist is crucial. In the sport, it's the pass that directly leads to a scored basket. In an office, an assist is stepping in to help a colleague complete a task that they get the final credit for.
What's really fascinating here is trying to pinpoint exactly why basketball terminology out of all the sports in the world crossed over so heavily into the corporate lexicon. Why not tennis? Why not swimming?
It goes back to the specific soft skills the game demands. Think about what a modern knowledge worker is expected to do. You operate in an open plan environment or a complex digital network. You need hyper-awareness of what multiple departments are doing simultaneously.
Right.
You need the ability to pivot your strategy instantly when market conditions change. And you need seamless, intuitive teamwork where roles shift fluidly. Basketball is the physical manifestation of those exact demands. The sport requires 5 people to operate as a single breathing organism, constantly adapting to chaos.
It is jazz in physical form. And if you are an English learner, integrating these idioms doesn't just expand your vocabulary. It fundamentally changes how native speakers perceive you.
Totally.
If you say, we need a massive coordinated marketing effort, you sound competent. If you say, we need to put a full court press on this, you sound fluent. You sound culturally attuned, confident, and integrated into the rhythm of the culture.
You move from translating to interpreting. Consider how beautifully the term sixth man applies to office dynamics.
I love this one.
In a basketball game, 5 players start on the court. The sixth man is the first substitute to come off the bench. They usually aren't the marquee superstar, but they are absolutely vital. They come in, change the pace, provide energy, and stabilize the team when the starters are tired.
Every office has a sixth man. It's the project manager who quietly organizes the chaos behind the scenes. It's the IT person who saves the presentation at the last minute. Calling a colleague your sixth man is an incredibly high compliment that acknowledges unseen, vital labor.
Or the pick and roll we discussed earlier. In a corporate setting, a pick and roll is a perfectly executed collaboration. Two people who know exactly what their respective roles are, acting in sync to bypass a bureaucratic obstacle. One person sets the screen, maybe by handling the difficult client questions, while the other person rolls right past and closes the deal.
It's the perfect metaphor. So we spent all this time talking about buzzer beaters, isolations, and sheer willpower metaphorically. But I want to look at a recent real-life event where all of these terms and all of the emotional weight of a story like Slam Dunk collided on the actual, literal global stage.
Yes, let's get into it.
Let's look at a player who absolutely embodies everything we've talked about.
We need to turn our attention to the Sports Illustrated coverage of the 2024 Paris Olympics, and specifically, we need to talk about Yuki Kawamura.
Yuki Kawamura is a phenomenon. He is a Japanese point guard. He was born in 2001. But the statistic that defines the narrative around him is his height. He stands at 5'7" or 1.70 meters. Just to put that into perspective for you guys listening, in the 2025-2026 NBA season, playing among the absolute greatest athletes on earth, Kawamura was the shortest player in the entire league.
5'7" in a league where the average height is around 6'6", and many players are well over 7 feet tall. It is an absurd physical disadvantage. But his career trajectory proves that the disadvantage is basically irrelevant.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
He dominated domestically, becoming the MVP of the Japanese B-League while playing for the Yokohama B Corsairs. He then successfully made the leap to the NBA, spending time developing with the Memphis Grizzlies, Chicago Bulls, and Indiana Pacers. He is a walking, breathing David versus Goliath narrative.
And that David versus Goliath dynamic has never in the history of the sport been more apparent or more cinematic than during the group stage of the 2024 Paris Olympics.
Yeah.
The matchup was Japan versus the host nation, France.
You have to understand the context of this game. France was heavily favored. They were playing on their home soil in front of a rabid crowd, and their roster is loaded with massive, towering NBA talent, anchored by Victor Wembanyama, who is an incomprehensible 7 feet 4 inches tall.
The height disparity across the board was comical. It looked like a high school team playing a professional team, and yet Japan was playing out of their absolute minds. They were executing with terrifying precision, and Kawamura was orchestrating the entire thing.
He was incredible.
He was having the game of his life. By the end, he had dropped 29 points, grabbed 7 rebounds, which at 5'7" is insane, and dished out 6 assists.
He was completely carving up the French defense. He was too fast. His passing angles were too sharp. His shooting was relentless.
Which brings us to the climax of the game, an actual buzzer-beater scenario.
Yeah.
There are just 10 seconds left on the game clock. Japan has pulled off the impossible. They are leading the French Giants 84-80. The stadium is in a state of shock.
10 seconds left. France has the ball. They are down by 4 points. This means they cannot just shoot a normal 2-pointer or even a 3-pointer to tie. They need a miracle.
A literal miracle.
The ball goes to the massive French center, Rudy Gobert. Gobert passes it out to the perimeter to his guard, Matthew Strassel.
Strassel catches the ball. Kawamura, fighting through screens, flies out to the perimeter to defend him. Strassel gives a pump fake, pretending to shoot to get Kawamura in the air. He gets an angle. He launches the desperate 3-pointer, and the shot goes in. It's an incredible shot.
It cuts the lead to 1. But before the ball even goes through the net, the referee's whistle blows.
A foul is called. The referee signals that Kawamura made illegal physical contact with Strassel during the shooting motion. Because the 3-point shot went in and a foul was called on the play, Strassel is awarded a free throw, a chance for a 4-point play to tie the game.
Now, this is a crucial moment for us to pause and look at how this was documented. Our Sports Illustrated source material, along with the massive viral reaction on social media that immediately followed, pointed out something highly controversial. Video replays from multiple angles, as well as high-resolution still photography published in the aftermath, appeared to show Kawamura making absolutely no physical contact with Strassel whatsoever. His hands were clearly pulled back.
Yeah, it looked like a phantom call.
However, I must explicitly state here for our listeners that we are strictly reporting the accounts detailed in this Sports Illustrated article and the viral public reaction to the event. We are not taking a side on the quality or integrity of the Olympic refereeing. We are not endorsing any political, national, or conspiratorial viewpoints regarding the officiating favoring the host nation. We are simply outlining the historical facts as they were widely reported by the source.
Absolutely. The call on the floor stood. That is the reality of the sport.
Yeah.
Strassel went to the free throw line, isolated in that psychological island we talked about, and he hit the shot. He tied the game at 84. Kawamura managed to get off a desperation three-pointer at the actual buzzer, but it missed, sending the game into overtime.
And in overtime, the sheer physical exhaustion and the massive size advantage of the French team finally overwhelmed Japan. France ultimately outlasted them to win 94-90.
It was a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking loss for Japan. It dropped them to 0-2 in the group stage, effectively ending their Olympic run, while France avoided what would have been one of the biggest upsets in Olympic basketball history. But if we connect Kawamura's performance back to our manga roots, the parallels are genuinely stunning.
They are unavoidable. Kawamura grew up idolizing another undersized Japanese basketball legend, Yuki Togashi, who is even shorter at 5'6". Kawamura's style of play, his blinding speed, his elite playmaking, his ability to dart under the sweeping arms of taller defenders, is exactly like watching Ryota Miyagi from Slam Dunk leap off the page and onto the court.
And his sheer, unfiltered heart refusing to back down, refusing to accept that a 7'4" giant has an automatic right to win, is pure Hanamichi Sakuragi.
Analyzing Kawamura's game actually raises a fascinating tactical question regarding the offensive vocabulary we just broke down.
Right. I was thinking about this while watching the highlights. When Kawamura is out there at 5'7", operating against massive Olympic centers like Gobert or Wembanyama, how is he surviving? Is he just running pure isolation plays where he takes them one-on-one using his speed? Or is his success entirely dependent on the architecture of his teammates setting screens and pick and rolls to protect him from the massive height mismatch?
It's a brilliant tactical question, and the answer is that he uses one to create the other. A player of his stature cannot just isolate against a set defense. It's too dangerous. He relies heavily on the pick and roll. He uses the screens set by his much larger Japanese teammates to force the French defense to switch assignments. He intentionally hunts the mismatch.
Oh, I see. He wants the giant to switch onto him.
Precisely. The pick and roll forces the 7-foot center to step out to the perimeter to guard the 5'7" Kawamura. Once that switch happens, Kawamura now has the giant isolated in open space. From there, he uses his elite speed and ball handling in an isolation scenario to blow past the center before the bigger man can even pivot his hips. He uses the geometry of the team structure to create a one-on-one advantage that negates height entirely.
It is physical chess at 100 miles an hour. It's just beautiful basketball.
Yeah.
But whether we were talking of the heartbreak of a controversial Olympic whistle on the global stage, or the localized, intense triumphs of a high school team in a 1990s manga, the Japanese approach to the sport seems to carry a very specific, intense, almost spiritual weight. It isn't just a game. Which brings us to the cultural foundation beneath all of this. Let's look at the culture behind the game.
To deeply understand a cultural phenomenon like slam dunk, and to understand the fiery drive of a player like Kawamura, we have to rely on the academic analysis in our sources. The literature points out that Japanese sports culture, particularly at the high school level, is deeply infused with what is often termed the samurai sportsman salaryman ethos.
I found this part of the reading so illuminating. It traces a direct line from ancient martial values to modern sports, and eventually to corporate loyalty. The sources highlight 3 specific cultural concepts that dictate this mindset: Bushido, Gaiman, and Kanjo. Let's really break these down because they are heavy.
Let's start with Bushido. Literally translated as the way of the warrior, it is the traditional code of the samurai. It emphasizes honor, extreme discipline, stoicism, and above all, absolute loyalty to the group or the master over the desires of the individual. In a sports context, the team is the clan.
Then you have Gaiman. The closest English translation is endurance or perseverance, but that doesn't quite capture the silent dignity of it. Gaiman is the ability to bear the seemingly unbearable pain, exhaustion, unfairness, with absolute patience and without complaint. It's an internalized stoicism. If you are forced to run sprints until you throw up, you do not complain. That is Gaiman.
But Gaiman is passive endurance. The active counterpart is Kanjo, which translates to guts, willpower, or sheer fighting spirit. Kanjo is the fire. It is the belief that physical limitations can be entirely overcome by the purity of one's willpower.
And you see this in every single frame of Slam Dunk. The training these kids go through isn't just physical conditioning. It reads like a spiritual breaking down of the ego. They practice defensive slides until their legs literally give out and they collapse on the hardwood. But that suffering isn't viewed as abusive. It is framed as a necessary purification. The pain burns away the selfishness. That is kanjo.
Exactly. The suffering binds the team together. Now, this intense group dynamic is further structured by a very strict vertical hierarchy known as the senpai and kohai relationship.
Senpai being the senior, the older, more experienced student, and kohai being the junior, the underclassman.
Correct. The
Yeah.
entire social order of the team is dictated by this dynamic.
Now, I want to question the translation of this concept for an English-speaking audience, because it's easy to misinterpret. In American sports, we have veterans and we have rookies. And sure, rookies are expected to carry the veterans' bags off the bus or buy them donuts or participate in whatever goofy hazing ritual the team has. Isn't the Senpai-Kohai dynamic essentially the exact same thing as American rookie hazing?
It is a very common comparison, but the Japanese dynamic goes so much deeper than carrying bags. It is not a temporary initiation period based merely on athletic experience. The Senpai-Kohai dynamic is a fundamental structural social construct that dictates behavior, respect, and duty.
It's baked right into the linguistics, right?
Absolutely. It is baked into the very grammar of the Japanese language through Kigo, which is the system of honorific speech. A kohai cannot casually address a senpai. They must use specific grammatical forms and vocabulary that physically structure the sentence to show deference. You are linguistically acknowledging your subordinate position every time you open your mouth. Furthermore, the relationship is a two-way street. While the kohai owes absolute obedience, the senpai has a profound lifetime obligation to mentor, guide, and protect the kohai. This obligation doesn't end when the season ends. It extends into university and often into their corporate careers. It is a mutual, lifelong social contract.
That context makes the interpersonal tension in the manga so much richer. When Sakuragi, a freshman, constantly disrespects Akagi, a senior, he isn't just being a brat. He's violating a sacred social contract. It's highly transgressive.
Which is why the tension is so electric. Now, the academic sources also highlight a broader cultural tension that the manga navigates perfectly. The conflict between two opposing adolescent mindsets, Koha and Nanpa.
Let's define those.
Koha is the hard, stoic, disciplined school of thought. It perfectly aligns with the concepts of Bushido and Kanjo. A Koha individual denies frivolous, earthly pleasures for the sake of a higher mission. They are serious, tough, and devoted. Nanpa, on the other hand, is the soft, flirtatious, fashion-focused mindset. A Nampa individual is concerned with aesthetics, chasing romantic interests, looking cool, and taking the path of least resistance.
Which provides the absolute perfect